The early days of horror games are hard to define, as most horror games before 1995 were action games with horror themes. Games were very well defined in the 8-bit and arcade eras, as many were built as side-scrollers where the objective was to reach the end and either avoid or eliminate obstacles. Games like Splatterhouse, Castlevania, and Ghouls and Ghosts are horror-themed side-scrollers in this vein. Looking at the aspects that made games like this part of the horror genre was very surface level, even for the time. They often showcased a lot of blood, gore, and violence, but many lacked what some may say is the most important aspect of a horror setting: atmosphere. Typically, a game would excel in one of these but falter in the other categories. There were exceptions. Sweet Home on the Famicom, for example, was an RPG survival horror game developed by Capcom and directed by Tokuro Fujiwara, whose most notable work before this was Ghosts and Goblins in the arcades and on the Famicom. Sweet Home was notable at the time of its release in 1989 for its emphasis on puzzles and inventory management with limited resources. Sound familiar? These traits would become staples of the genre moving forward. Fujiwara would go on to become a prominent figure at Capcom, both directing and producing many more iconic titles, including several Disney properties like Goof Troop on the Super Nintendo, but most notably Resident Evil. Resident Evil released in 1996 and was produced by Tokuro Fujiwara and directed by Shinji Mikami, whose previous work at Capcom nearly mirrored Fujiwara's, most notably Goof Troop on the Super Nintendo. Fancy that. Mikami and Fujiwara started the project to remake Sweet Home on modern platforms, which at the time was the PS1, the Saturn, and the PC. But they went above and beyond, not only revolutionizing the genre of gaming, but also setting a standard in the genre of horror. Resident Evil became a spectacle for being one of the most realistic horror experiences of its time. It takes inspiration from George Romero films and the like and creates a B-movie horror setting that feels eerie and realistic due to its innovative use of pre-rendered backgrounds. By this method, the game not only ran smoother than other horror games of the time, but also looked more photorealistic, making the setting feel even more real. It still utilized tank controls and limited inventory systems like Sweet Home, but also gave you an option between two protagonists, each with their own advantages and disadvantages, giving the player more agency over how they approach the game. The music was also notable for not being only harrowing and scary, but also gentle and reserved while in save rooms. To give the player an indication of a moment of reprieve. This duality music not only gets the player in a sense of dread and panic, but also a sense of calm, indicating safety, as well as a foreboding evil looming just outside.